Want to level up your leadership? Welcome to The Boss Coach.
A dash of cool, a splash of class. The Boss Coach leads, no time to pass. Oh, the Boss Coach, the leader's guide.
Should I have gone with the disco version of the theme song? I don't know, not gonna lie, it was pretty good. You know, I've decided that when I hit my first 100 followers, we're gonna celebrate with a special new theme song, at least for a couple of episodes. So spread the word so you can hear a different intro, if that's what you want. So hey boss, how's business? Does your company do a summer picnic, or do you have a party coming up or something? You know, it's always fun when you get to meet coworkers, spouses, and families. They're all a little bit different outside of work, aren't they? You know, get a couple drinks in them, and they give you plenty of funny stories. So thanks for clicking and listening as always. My name is Patrick McGranahan, and welcome back to The Boss Coach. If you're new to the show, I would recommend you check out the podcast trailer. That's episode 100. Gives you a little background on what The Boss Coach is all about. Of course, there's several episodes out there as well, so you might as well dig into all of it. But let's jump right into today's topic. It's on culture. Now, I know we hear that a lot, and we hear about how employees choose workplaces based on culture. They say 1 in 5 people have left a job over culture. But what exactly is culture? It's one of those words that kind of loses meaning the more you say it. Maybe we should start with instead what is not culture.
Friday is Hawaiian Shirt Day. So, you know, if you want to, go ahead and wear a Hawaiian shirt and jeans.
Great energy there, Lumberg. So office space isn't the best example of good office culture. It's a good example of bad office culture. But I don't think I need to sell you on the importance of good culture. I mean, if you look at Quantum's Great Places to Work surveys, people use words like motivating, positive, comfortable, caring, all that to explain why culture is so important. In fact, last year at our company, we had an intern project, and it found them looking at the effects of culture on hiring and retention. You know, the results were obvious. When mentoring my project group, what they needed most was to define what culture means more than anything. So let's do what we always do and focus on the concrete things we can do to ensure that you have great culture in your workplace. To do that, let's first understand what exactly we're talking about when we say culture, because it means different things to different people. I'm going to sum it up in 3 pretty specific ways. Number 1, there's a difference between microculture and macroculture. Now, most surveys look at the overall company culture, that's macro, versus your team or your department, and that's micro. If you do a pulse survey at your company, I hope you do. We do it here. It's very enlightening. I'm sure it measures satisfaction with the company and also with their immediate manager. You may notice that a lot of times those results are different. They may say, I am in tune with the company's vision, but not so much with my manager, or vice versa. So that's the difference between micro and macro. You know, you can largely control the microculture of your department, but you have a smaller impact on the macro culture. You know, focus on where you have levers, and that's on the microculture. Regardless of the global sentiment, that's what you can control, so focus there. Second, morale is not the same as culture. Morale is a short-term snapshot of everyone's mood, right? It could vary from day to day, week to week. Culture is the long-term soul of the company. You know, Work Human says that culture is the shared values, belief systems, attitudes, and the sets of assumptions that people in a workplace share. Now that sounds kind of gooey, but what it just means is if the corporate ecosystem all agrees that this company's values are grinding out the work, and then going home, or maybe they all agree that the culture only values the bottom line, or you value having fun and money comes later. You know, you get the idea. It's the vibe of the overall corporation that you all share. And then third, culture is not a pizza party. You don't judge the culture of a company based on an occasional reward or event. That is part of building culture, yes, but it's not the culture itself. Think of your company's culture like the weather. You know, sometimes it's sunny and you have a picnic. Sometimes it's raining and hailing and you stay inside. But culture is the overall climate and livability of where you are, not just an isolated event. There need to be more sunny days than wet ones so that the rain is worth enduring. It means that you always have something to look forward to. So that's how culture is not an isolated event. All right, now that we understand culture a little better, let's talk about some concrete ways to ensure the microculture of your team is healthy. We're going to do that through what's known as t-shirt sizing. You're probably familiar with this. The small, medium, and large approaches. So the small approach. These are the little day-to-day things that have to be organic and grassroots. You know, people relax because they're comfortable, and these things tend to grow. They develop over time. They like to say that it's a slow cooker and not a pressure cooker, right? It evolves with time. This looks like things like, you know, recognizing anniversaries, birthdays, doing meeting openers to make things fun, having running jokes that pop up. You know, don't discourage these things. participate, but of course don't hijack them. Let them own it, and then that makes them feel like they are a definite integral part of the team and that they have some control over something, which is the culture. Here's an example. On birthdays and work anniversaries, I send out an email, and it goes out to the team, the extended department, leadership above me and such. I do silly things like, oh, well, you were born on this day. On the same day in history, something really cool happened. They invented ice cream, right? And so this person loves something strange, butterbrickle. And, make the comparisons, just something silly but memorable. So they all know that, look, somebody thought about me. Somebody recognized it. And it's just a very small way to make everyone feel comfortable and included. Now let's look at the medium approach. So this is where you have to create a safe and vibrant ecosystem through servant leadership. Celebrate wins, encourage growth, be seen, lead down. This may sound a little more esoteric, but you know what? You're creating an atmosphere by your actions. And if you can't still put a finger on it, just remember this. Go back to a time when you were in a comfortable atmosphere. Was it church, school, work, at home, whatever? You just felt comfortable, relaxed, and that you could be how you want to be. Was it overt? Did someone say, you are now comfortable? Or was it just something that the leaders did that you couldn't put your finger on that made a good atmosphere? More than likely it's that one, right? And also, more than anything, you know a bad atmosphere when you're in it. Nobody sets out to create a bad atmosphere. They do it by the things that they don't say. It's by their actions, and it's by the interpretations of those actions. So always be cautious and careful that you're creating a welcoming and comfortable atmosphere. So here's kind of an example of a medium one, creating an atmosphere. Now, there's a difficulty in balancing performance and maintaining a good culture, right? Because if you're really all about that grind culture, getting things down, pushing for results, people are going to feel it. So instead, you have to come up with ways to acknowledge hard work without punishing those that are going a little bit behind. You tend to improve the lower performers by encouraging the higher performers. I do something called a Limelight Award. In one of my teams, they are measured partially by a satisfaction survey. The Limelight Award recognizes the highest score for the last quarter in these surveys. Oftentimes we have perfect quarters. Someone gets perfect fives on all their surveys all quarter long, which is amazing. But the Limelight Award basically says, here are the people who are giving the best satisfaction for their service throughout the quarter. And again, it's not saying here are the people that didn't perform well. It's just showing that because you have an environment where you foster excellence and you encourage high performers, then you will also encourage the lower performers as well. Okay, now here's the large initiative for culture, and this is being a culture carrier. That means that your influence spills over into the larger organization, the macro culture. Now you may think, well, I don't have any impact there. I'll bet you do. Think about things like when leaders start to ask you to meet with their peers to help them with their team culture, or how you can help influence what they do, or maybe they start suggesting to their other teams, hey, you should do it the way she does it over on that team, etc. Or, maybe you have office culture responsibilities. Here's a great example. I may have shared this story before, but a few years back, a former CEO reached out and said, hey, we're doing this culture committee in each of our offices, each of our main hubs, and I'd like you to be the head for our office. Now, it's not something that you would normally say. You would give to a man because it sounds like a party planning committee, right? But that's not really what it's about. And so rather than saying, no, that doesn't sound like me, I always tell my people and myself, say yes. There's an opportunity there. This is something you can use to your advantage later. And so I said, yes, absolutely, I'll do it. I'll figure out what that means, and we will influence the culture here in our office. So I take the responsibility of being a culture carrier very seriously. In fact, it comes up in almost every review and every assessment that I'm a culture carrier. It's from peer reviews as well and recommendations. They say that I am a culture carrier for the organization. So being a culture carrier affecting the macro culture is a wonderful way to level up your leadership. So therefore, to be a culture champion, you need to be mindful of your small, medium, and large influences. So boss, that begs the question, how's your culture? How can you tell? You know what? Let's do a scorecard right now. It's actually pretty easy. On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being best, I want you to rate each of these following 5 pieces of your leadership. Number 1, is your attrition low? Give yourself a 5 if you haven't had anyone, let's say, leave within the past year. And then take a point away for each person who's left in the last year. All right, number 2, in your one-to-ones, do people open up and confide in you? Do they talk about their personal lives? Do they talk about their challenges, where they think they're doing well? Or are they kind of closed off and is very clinical? I would say give yourself a 5 if they always share with you. 3 sometimes, and 0 if you don't do one-to-ones at least once a month. Okay, number 3 on the scorecard. How is your team regarded in the organization? If you use a satisfaction survey, use those results to determine how well they're doing and how they're seen through others. If not, how do other teams talk about yours? If it's always favorable, then a 5. If never favorable, then give it a 0. If it's something in between, use your judgment. All right, number 4 on the scorecard. Can you name everyone on your team's spouse and or pet? Oh, I know that's a hard one. If you can get them all, then give yourself a 5. Most a 3, and none is a 0. And scorecard number 5. When was the last time you told someone on your team that you appreciate them? That's a simple one. Give yourself a 5. It's been in the last week, and then subtract 1 point for every week longer than that. Okay, your 5-question scorecard. How is your score, boss? Be honest. If it's over 20, that's great. You are a culture-centric boss. 15 to 20, I'd say maybe you've got room to improve, but not bad. Under 10, you're probably going to need to start making culture more of a priority. But if you didn't do great, don't stress about it. This is a pre-assessment. This is the baseline. In fact, this is going to be the one thing you can do today to make sure that you are fostering culture and that you are leveling up your leadership. Email the results that you just did to yourself so it's date stamped. And at some point in the future, we're going to do this again on another future episode. We'll take the scorecard, we'll take the assessment, and we'll see how you've improved. And I know you're going to make the jump from a culture wannabe to a culture hero. You can do it. And finally, I don't want to disappoint anyone who thought this episode was going to reference Boy George and his 80s pop powerhouse Culture Club, judging by the name. So there actually is a relevant tidbit here, believe it or not. You all know the song Karma Chameleon. Very catchy. Culture Club's lyrics really aren't that deep. But when interviewed about that particular song, Boy George admitted that it's a song about the fear of isolation, loneliness, lack of connection. The subject of the song keeps pushing people away and then wondering why people won't stay with them. There's a lesson there. One of the words you've heard a lot here today is comfortable, right? When you make people comfortable, they want to stay. They want to be there. They want to exist in your orbit. Culture at its very heart is simply about making people comfortable. If you can boil it down to that, then you can do culture. And by the way, I hope this podcast is making you feel more comfortable about your own leadership. You've come a long way. We're a few episodes in. Keep going. We're growing together, and I'm really happy to be on this journey with you. As always, thank you for your time. I'm Patrick McGranahan, the Boss Coach. Make sure to thumbs up and follow so you get notice of new episodes. And hey, please share my episodes with friends. People are doing that, and it's growing quickly because of it. I really appreciate it. So help spread the word. Send in your comments, too. I'd love to hear from you. I want to hear suggestions for future episodes or whatever it is you have. I love hearing from you. Until then, I'll see you next time on the Boss Coach. Back to work, boss.
Thank you for joining us today for The Boss Coach, hosted by Patrick McGranahan. We'd also like to thank our associate producer, Hannah, and consulting contributor, Stephanie. Original music provided by Sono AI Studio. All statements and opinions by our host and guests are solely their own observations and may not reflect those of their contemporaries or employers. Please check out other episodes of The Boss Coach for more valuable opportunities to level up your leadership. Until next time, I am your announcer, Ava. Have a great day, and as always, lead with your heart.